Good evening, Rabbi. Tonight we're going to talk about a topic which is, I'm sure, very close to to your uh, to your heart. Why? Because we talked about this before.
Women?
Uh, yeah, we can talk about that some other time. But I'm talking about the issue of Brit Milah. So the interesting thing is like this, right? That the way it works with Milah is that a person, who's born as a Jew, on the eighth day, he's supposed to get a Milah, a Brit Milah, circumcision, right? So what happens is that sometimes, by the way, first of all, let me tell you one issue which is important to know, which is that you cannot do it early. In other words, if let's say want to do the Milah on the sixth day or the seventh day, you're not allowed to do that. You have to wait till the eighth day. And if you did it, that's like a big no-no, right? You did like kind of a sin or whatever, it's definitely considered to be very problematic to do that. So doing it too early is a problem. Doing it too late is also a problem, the milah. So what does that mean? Instead of doing the eighth day, you do it some other day, 9th or 10th or 11th or 12th. So what happens over there is like this, that says the Zohar Kadosh, that the symbol of the foreskin, the Brit Milah, which is called the orla in Hebrew. Orla is the foreskin, right? That's what we cut off. So says the Zohar Kadosh that this is like the symbol of wickedness, sinful behavior in this world. What does that mean? That a person who doesn't get a Brit Milah, who's not circumcised, is considered to be very close to sin, very close to impurity, very close to contamination, spiritual, right, to filth, all these kinds of things. So what happens is that when you cut the foreskin, that turns a person into a much more spiritual being. It says Zohar Kadosh, by the way, if you don't do that, if you don't cut it, what happens is that person is not able to study Torah, to absorb anything about Torah, to understand anything, in spiritual matters. He's a total dud, total zero in spiritual. You're not even allowed to teach him like that when he's uncircumcised, So uncircumcised is a very, very poor spiritual state. So therefore, says Zohar Kadosh, what happens is that if you do it late, the milah, that causes a big problem. Why? Because you're leaving, the longer you leave on the foreskin, the more the child is being contaminated by the impurity. So time is of the essence. That's what it says in the Zohar Kadosh, right? So therefore it has to be done on the 8th day, but not only that, right? Doing it on the 9th day, 10th day is definitely a problem because of this, what we just mentioned. Even on the 8th day itself, it says in the Gemara, it says in the Talmud, that a person should try to do it early in the day, in the morning. In other words, right after the morning prayers are over, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., whatever it is, right? Do the milah right away. Don't wait till the afternoon. Even though you could, according to halacha, you're allowed to wait, but zizim maktimim, you shouldn't wait. So you gotta do the milah as early as possible. This is the idea, And if you don't, what happens is that impurity causes on that child a damage, spiritual damage. So the longer it stays, the more it damages him. So therefore, it's considered to be very imperative, very, very crucial to do it on time. So, milah is, without that, by the way, there's also, the Chazal, the Zohar Kadosh, they talk about this issue as well, that a person who has milah, he can live in Eretz Israel. He's able to inherit Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. A person who's not circumcised has no portion in the Eretz Israel. He cannot acquire Eretz Israel in an uncircumcised way. So it has to do with that as well. So the essence of being Jewish, when it comes to learning Torah, when it comes to living in Israel, all these things, without Brit Milah, it's not really possible. It's not really relevant like that, to live like that, without the Brit Milah. It's considered to be a very, very crucial thing, Okay, that, is well known, all these things, what I'm telling you, it's documented, and written in books and everything, fine. But there are also, cases which are unusual, when it comes to Brit Milah. I remember you had that situation. We talked about that, right? You called me up. We had discussions about it, and so forth and so on. So the rule is, regarding that, just to recap, right? What happens like this, right? Sometimes the mohel does a botch up, he botches up something. So the botch up could be in many ways. Sometimes he cuts too deep. Sometimes he cuts too much. All kinds of crazy things that we've heard. You've already heard this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there's also, a very common problem, which is that sometimes the mohel doesn't cut enough. You know what I mean? So he leaves the child uncircumcised, basically. So the question is, what do we? How do we judge that? Right? What's the border that we cannot cross? So the truth is, it goes according to majority. That's what it says in Halakha, Shulchan Aruch, that if the majority of the crown is exposed in terms of height, in terms of circumference, it's kosher. But if it's not, if the majority is covered with the foreskin, it has to be done again.
Yeah.
We talked about this.
Yeah.
Right? So this is the crucial element there, The majority is what plays the role there. There's also another thing, which is that the truth is, the foreskin, if you speak to a mohel or a doctor, he'll explain to you, it has two layers there, that foreskin. It's not one layer. So there's two layers. That means you have to cut two layers in order to do the milah properly. So the Chazal say that when it comes to milah, right, the Ishmaelim also, the Arabs, they also do milah, but their milah is not the same as ours. First of all, they do it late, which is also very bad. At the age of 13, why do they do it at the age of 13? Because their forefather Ishmael, he was circumcised at the age of 13. That's what it says in the Bible, right? In the Chumash. So they continue that tradition until this day. That's what it is, But they don't realize one thing, right? What they're making a mistake. What's the mistake? The mistake is that even though their forefather Ishmael was circumcised at 13, that's because Hashem commanded them at that age to circumcise. So he had no choice to be circumcised at that age, But somebody who's newborn, is not supposed to wait till the age of 13. This is the mistake that they make, number one. Number two, another mistake that they make when it comes to milah is that according to their tradition, they cut the first layer but not the second layer, So what happens is that the second layer falls off eventually, with intercourse, with all kinds of, rubbing, this kinds of stuff, right? Friction. It comes off anyway in the end. But it stays on until you rub it off or whatever, right? You do something with it. So the thing is that this is not good. Why? Because according to halakha, you're supposed to do the milah with both layers, cut them off right away. And if you don't, it's not kosher, according to Jewish law. By the way, the Rambam says something interesting. The Rambam says that a goy, I'm not talking about a Christian, right? I'm talking about Ishmaeli Arabs. They are obligated, according to halakha, to do circumcision. Why is that? Because they come from the sons of Keturah and Ishmael. They come from those sons, and Hashem commanded Abraham Avinu to circumcise those sons. So they were circumcised. So they are commanded from the Torah, the Ishmaelim, to circumcise their children. But the problem is that they're not doing it the right way. As we said, right? Number one, they're doing it too late. They should be doing it on the 8th day, like everybody else.
Yeah.
Number two, also because that they're not cutting the second layer. So their circumcision is inferior. You should know, by the way, that a lot of them opt, in Israel, if you ever see that, they go to Jewish, mohels to do circumcision for their children. Because they know the Jewish mohels are good. They know what they're doing, right? And they're better. I mean, it's the bottom line. They know according to halakha what to do.
As long as they don't come to him.
Yeah, that's a different story. Horror story. So anyway, right? That says the Rambam that they're obligated to do milah. So why do I tell you this? Because there was a question that I was asked the other day by somebody who's working together with me, for the conversion program that we have, because when you convert men, you also need a mohel to sometimes circumcise them. You know what I mean? That's a part of the conversion. So you have to have that on your staff. As a converting rabbi, you have to have somebody who does that. So what happened was that our mohel, right, the one that we're working with, he asked me an interesting question. A couple of questions that we spoke about. Number one is like this, right? That if the, let's say for instance, there's a halacha like this also in Shulchan Aruch, in laws of Milah. It says like this, as we said, right, that the Ishmaelim, the Arabs, the Muslims, they do circumcision, So what about if they now want to convert to Judaism? So how do we convert them? They're already circumcised. So what do we do, What's the procedure? So the truth is, there's a machloket about this in the Rishonim, in the early authorities. What to do with somebody who comes to convert and he's already circumcised? Because circumcision is a part of the conversion. So, says Rabbeinu Hananel, something interesting. He says that you can't convert somebody like that. Why is that? Since it's not possible to circumcise them, there's no way you can do conversion with them. So just leave them the way they are, Leave them a goy. That's what he says, But there are others, halakha gedolot, and many other poskim. Most of the poskim say that what? And the Rambam also says, the Shulchan Aruch brought down, that there is a way to bring them also, to convert them as well. The ones who are circumcised. Even though we can't circumcise them, you can't circumcise somebody twice. You know what I mean? You already cut it, that's off, it's gone. It's gone, right? What are you going to cut now? You're going to cut another layer? It's going to be already, you're already cutting inside already, right? Inside the flesh. So what do you do? So the rule is, it says in Shulchan Aruch, according to what we just said, that you have to take a drop of blood from him, You got to pinch him with a pincetta, take a drop of blood.
That's if he was already circumcised.
Yeah, right, he's already circumcised. You can't cut him, there's nothing to cut. So take a drop of blood, and that's it, right? You can convert him like that. I'm talking literally a drop. You don't need more than a drop. So it's not like a big surgery, not a big deal, not a big issue. The thing is also, by the way, you should know, from doing this procedure of conversion, what I've seen is, that, I already knew this also beforehand as well. What I see is that Americans, are largely circumcised.
They are, yeah.
You know that, right?
Yeah.
Because they do it as a health thing, it's a health issue.
Yeah, in the hospital.
Right, exactly, in the hospital. That's what it is, So the ones who are coming to me, for circumcision, I'm asking them, are you circumcised? Yeah. So what do? We take a drop from them. That's what we do.
How many guys have you converted?
We did 2. We did a few, yeah. We have another one coming in next week. So the point is like this, right? Yeah. That you got to take a drop from them. Yeah. So this is what we do. So halacha is not like that opinion that says you can't convert somebody who's already circumcised. That's going a little bit too far, right? It's a legitimate opinion, but it's not the halacha. Okay, but the question wasn't about that. That's already well known, well documented. Everybody knows that. The question is like this, right? What about if there are cases like this? By the way, you should know. But on the Shulchan Aruch also, there are people who get circumcised, and at some point in their life, they don't look circumcised anymore. In other words, the foreskin comes back down, or sort of, and covers again. How does that happen? You ever hear something like this?
No, no.
It's like a regression. You regress back to what you were before. It happens to people. It's quite common. You know why this happens? 2 reasons, usually. One is because the guy is very fat, gained a lot of weight, and because of that, got fat, and coming down and covering the crown. That's one option. This happens a lot. It's not that common, but it's quite common. That's one thing, because they're fat. That it comes down. The other thing is, that the organ, the penis, got smaller. Because when people get older, it gets smaller. Because they don't have so much hormones anymore. Testosterone is much lower level, So because of that, now whatever was left there, the foreskin, which was below the crown, is now above the crown and covering the crown. This is another option. That we have two different options, right? So in both cases, the question is also, let's say if you have a Jew like this, who was circumcised, and then it came back down again. So what's the rule with this guy? Let's say he's a Jew. What's the rule with him? What's the rule with somebody who's converting? What I mean to say is like this, right? The question is, if let's say he was already circumcised, he's a Muslim, right? He was already circumcised. Now what happened was that he's coming to convert, but he now doesn't look circumcised anymore because of the reasons that we just mentioned. What do we do with him? So the truth is, this came up as a practical case. This guy, this Mohel, he actually found somebody like this, So he was in shock, because he told them, "Oh yeah, I'm circumcised," and then he opens it up and it looks like he's not. Surprise, surprise, right? That's the way it is, right? So what do you do with a case like that? He asked me, what do you think about that? So the truth is, I wasn't really sure 100% what to tell him in the beginning. It requires some thought, to this whole thing, So the truth is that regarding Jews, this is documented, this issue. What does that mean? If a Jew got circumcised when he was a kid, and then it came back down again. So what's the rule? Says the Shulchan Aruch, we don't care about that.
I was just going to say, you leave it.
Logical, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Question is why? What's the reason why? So the way they explain is like this. What they say is that he's already done. In other words, he was already circumcised when it was done. It was done. But now what happened was that because of the change in his body, his body changed. But that's already something which happened later on. So in other words, the circumcision was already performed. So what happens afterwards is already not a part of that, it's not an issue anymore. That's what Shulchan Aruch says, So therefore, if you find somebody like that, a Jew, who, doesn't look like he's circumcised anymore, even though once he did, we don't have to do nothing with him. He's fine. Even though he doesn't look like anymore that he's circumcised. We can just leave it like that. We don't have to tell him now, okay, you know what? Oh yeah, you're 75 years old. Okay, get circumcised again. Can you imagine if he would do that? What people will say about that?
He did it in his 40s.
Right, that was probably for the first time.
Yeah, first time.
Usually it's Russians, that have this issue.
Yeah.
Russians, because they weren't circumcising over there in Moscow and Leningrad, places like this. They were not doing it. Odessa, I don't know, whatever, right? I don't know about Odessa. I'm not really sure about that. But anyway, right, Odessa is Ukraine. It's a little different area. But anyway, the point is, right, that now, okay, so regarding the Jew, we said that we're not worried about that. Why? Because he was already circumcised as it is. So now the question is, what about the Muslim, right? The Muslim, he was circumcised, but came back down. But the question is, can we rely that his circumcision was done well in the first place? That we can just say, oh, well, it was already done and that's it, right? So the truth is, according to the language of the poskim, I was looking around, the poskim, the language of the poskim seems to imply that it's considered to be like he's circumcised already. Why is that? Because the Arabs, the Muslims, they do circumcision. It's something which is routine for them, they do it for everybody. It's a universal thing. So, in other words, they know pretty much what has to be done, more or less, whatever it is, right? So, therefore, right, the rule is that if it came back down again, after he was already circumcised, so we would probably say the same thing, he doesn't need to be cut again.
You guys converted an Arab?
Actually, I never did, but as I said, right, that today, the Americans are like Arabs because they're circumcising.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what it is. A lot of these Americans, most of the people that I see, are already circumcised.
Yeah, my friends are circumcised.
Right. Some of them are not, by the way. It's an option.
So some of them
you can
are
opt in, you can opt out.
Yeah.
Right? It's an option. Sometimes, circumstantial things happen, and they don't do it for some reason or other. Say the child was a little bit weak or sick, so they just forget about it, and they don't do it. So a lot of them come out to be not circumcised. That's the way it is, right? So, it's a mixed bag, like 50-50, whatever, I don't know, God knows what. Whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have an interesting question. Not that I'm fascinated with this topic, but since we're on it. They're circumcised, but I went to a Brit Milah once.
Yeah.
It was an Ashkenazi guy doing it. And he said, if you were circumcised in a hospital, he made a big point of this.
Uh-huh.
He announced this to everybody before performing it. He said, I just want you to know, because you people may be misinformed. If you were circumcised in a hospital without the ritual, it doesn't count as a...
So what do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do? We just said, right? You got to do a drop of blood. That's all you can do. That's the rule.
When you have the prayer. And in other words, what he meant is if you were...
There's no prayer. Just do a drop of blood, you're done. That's it.
Oh, I see. All right.
That's what you do.
So it doesn't necessarily...
So
and
there's a rule like this in halakha. If a Jew was circumcised by a goy, which is usually what happens in the hospital,
right? By a doctor.
So he was circumcised by a goy, so there's nothing left to take. So what do? Drop of blood.
Oh, okay.
This is what we do.
So it's still kosher, even though a rabbi...
Yeah, there's no other choice. It's not supposed to be done that way.
No.
No. But it was done. Whatever was done, was done.
It's funny that he...
But diavad.
He said that it doesn't count as, as a proper ritual.
It's true. It doesn't count. But once you do the drop...
Okay, all right.
You're absolved.
Yeah. He didn't say anything about
that.
Right,
he didn't mention that. He only mentioned the downside, not the upside.
He tried to inform us and he misinformed us.
Right, a little bit misinformed, exactly. That's what I'm saying, Okay, so you get the idea, right? So that's the way it goes when it comes to circumcision. So, as we said, that the issue of being circumcised and not circumcised, in the beginning, what happens is like this, right? So let's just sum it up, right? And make sure we understand. When a mohel is doing the milah, that moment that he's doing the milah, he's supposed to finish everything, like take off the whole foreskin, 100%. Shouldn't leave nothing. You know what I mean? As we said, there's 2 layers. So you got to make sure you get 2 layers, not 1 layer. By the way, what some mohels do, they take off 2 layers in one shot. They do it like deeper. So that's also possible to do. You can do 2 layers in one shot. If you're a sharpshooter, right? You know how to do it.
From what I know, it's an incredibly painful procedure.
That's why we give the kid, some wine. We give him a little wine.
The wine helps.
We numb him out, right? It's a numb out.
5 minutes,
But they're okay. They do pretty well. Usually they're usually fine. What do you call it? So what I'm telling you is like this, right? That you got to cut everything. L'chatchila. So what does that mean? If you're still cutting and something was left over, you should finish everything. But what happens like this, right? Let's say the mohel didn't do everything. He left a little bit over. We talked about this, right?
Yeah.
So then, how does it work? The majority, If the majority is open, good. What does that mean? Majority of the height of the crown and the majority of the circumference.
That's what that old guy that you sent me to, he couldn't decide. He said it's 50-50. And he said, I really don't know what to do. I don't want to make the kid suffer again.
Wow.
He said, in my opinion, as he grows, and he starts running around, what again? It's going to recede,
right?
And it's going to be okay.
Okay, I got that. Well, he was supposed to be an expert, so hopefully he gave you the right advice.
But this guy...
he is. Okay, so anyway, right, the point is, that's for sure. So...
You're supposed to face up to your screw-up, Anybody can screw up,
Absolutely.
You're not God,
Absolutely. But then Hashem, things will get better.
Yeah.
So as we said, right, when he's cutting, you should cut everything. But if he missed something and it got left over, so then we go according to the majority. By the way, there's also another situation which I want to mention. Is sometimes that a person is born already circumcised. Can you imagine? There are people who are born circumcised. You ever hear that before?
No.
It's very rare, but it does happen. So the question is, what do we do with him? So the answer is the same. We do a drop of blood. There's nothing else you can do. What are you going to do?
Born circumcised.
Yeah.
You mean basically born with no foreskin?
No foreskin, right? Exactly. It happens.
That's like a woman that doesn't need to shave her legs.
That what do you call it? What am I tell you? That they say that some of the biggest Jewish rabbis were born like that, like Moshe Rabbeinu, like Yaakov Avinu. Yeah. They were born circumcised already.
I see. Which
is supposed to be like in other words, it's supposed to show holiness.
I see.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah, like a different plateau there. That's the idea, right? So, the question is, but what do you do with him? Take a drop of blood. You know what I mean? That's what it is. So, in these cases, we do a drop of blood. As we said, right? The rule is that if a person gets older, or fatter, and it starts to come back down, we're not worried about that. As long as it was good in the beginning.
Yeah.
Whatever was done was done. That's the idea, right? So now regarding the ger, the convert, right? As we said, if he already is circumcised, what do? Take a drop of blood. That's what we do with him. If he's not circumcised, what do? We got to send him to the hospital to do a circumcision, because you can't do it in the synagogue. It's not something you do in the synagogue. Circumcise a 40-year-old man.
Okay, that's interesting.
You know what I mean?
You mentioned that.
He needs a procedure. You know what I mean?
Okay, I was under the impression that.
This is not something you do with Kedem wine,
Okay. So this guy that I knew, he passed away from cancer, but I'm assuming he had it done in the hospital.
Yeah, probably. That's what they have to do it in the hospital.
All right.
Because they need anesthesia. It's very painful. It's very. It's quite a experience.
He was in pain for about a week, but he was okay.
Right, but I'm saying at the time of the cut,
Yeah.
it can be quite painful.
This guy that I'm actually talking about, it's very sad because he truly wanted to do it. He did it. And ever since he did that, his life just went down the hill. He lost his business.
Wow.
He died a few years ago from cancer.
Wow.
He was a good guy.
Unbelievable. All right, so anyway, right, the point is like this, right? When it comes to the convert, as we said, if he's already circumcised, but if he was already circumcised, and now because he got fat or he got old, that it came back down.
We don't make him suffer.
Exactly, we don't have to cut it again because, we assume that it was done properly, because that's what they do, that's their custom.
Unless he's married or living with Lorena Bobbitt. You remember
I don't know
her?
what that is.
That's the one that cut it off to the root.
Ooh.
When her husband was sleeping.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah,
well, that's what
what
Tzipporah did. You don't know
that was a big.
She circumcised her son like that.
A big scandal.
Ah, really?
In '93. Yeah.
Tell me
he
about
was
that.
sleeping.
I didn't know.
She cut it to the root. She went.
Why? She wanted to convert him?
No. He was abusing her, or
I see.
She was angry.
Okay.
So she mutilated her husband.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
She drove for miles and she dumped it somewhere.
Wow.
And the incredible thing is, when he got up and he realized what was going on, when he woke up from this, when he called the cops took her. She remembered where she dumped it. It was still, I guess it was still fresh. I don't know. And they attached it.
Oh, that sounds fun. Sounds like fun.
Yeah. Rabbi,
only in America.
I'm telling you, they attached it to the T perfectly.
Wow.
And he made a porn movie after that. John Bobbitt. You don't remember the story? He was on Howard Stern.
We're talking Divrei Torah.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
So, thanks for coming. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen, amen. Chazak u'baruch. Be blessed with wealth, health, and happiness.
Amen.
And clean language. Amen, amen. Chazak u'baruch.
Well, since we were talking about penis.